This video on how to refurbish a cheek block, or sometimes called a deck block, or a foot block. This is a Lewmar fitting. This one is about 35 years old and it's been in the Mediterranean, so that's you'll see in a minute. Well, I made the video and then I realized that it was possible to do the work without actually having machine tools, which is what I show in the first bit. So if you hang on to the end, it'll explain how to get around the fact that you haven't got a lathe. This after it's been repaired, so that's a standard cheek block, around about 74 millimeters in diameter, the sheath. And so the problem about this, the reason for doing this was that the sheath had completely disintegrated. This is about after 35 years in the Mediterranean, so it's not really surprising that it's in a pretty poor state. So the necessity was to remove that and put in a new sheath. So that means removing this pin, and this pin goes right through, and in the factory it's been pressed over at the inside end so that it's locked into place. And the necessity, in order to withdraw the pin, you have to somehow get rid of the swaged over end, which has become quite big in diameter, and then drive the pin out. Now, one way I tried to do it was to mill off all of the bulging bit. The actual head that you can see is about 10.5 millimeters in diameter, and it's really quite big. And so I milled that off and then tried to drive the pin out, and I couldn't do it without doing quite a lot of what I thought was damage to the system. So in the end I drilled it out. Now the pin, there it is actually only about 7.8 millimeters in diameter. It looks a lot bigger when you see the ends of it, but it's actually only about 7.8 millimeters. So if you're going to drill it out, you've got to be very accurate where you put the drill in. So the first thing you've got to do is to mark it out so that you've got the exact center, and then you can work up in drill sizes. The maximum you can really use if you're going to go down inside there is about 7.9 mil. But you've got to be spot on in the middle of the pin to justify that. So probably I would stick with 7.5, and then you should be able to get it out if you put a small punch in the middle and bash it out. So you need to drill through probably something like 8 mil into the pin here in order to clear the metal. So having done that, you've got the pin out. You've now wrecked the pin. The pin is no longer any use. So you need to make yourself before we go on to that, here's the section through what you've got when you've taken it out. I've put it back together so I can't actually show you all of these. So here's the body of it. This is a cross section through the middle. Here's your pin going down with the swaged over bit at the bottom end here. So it's quite a narrow pin there, and then it's got a stainless block that rotates on it. It's more or less a loose fit on the pin, and when I certainly looked at it, it was a pretty loose fit on here, and it's not clear where the bearing, which is meant to be the main bearing surface. I suspect either, but I'm not really sure. Certainly on the worn one, the main bearing surface was here, because actually this piece of steel here was corroded onto this one and there was no movement between the two, so the bearing was here. Anyway, so this is your sheath, which is recessed and this width here is a little bit less than the hub width, so that you don't jam up against the side of the cheeks here. So that's the job. So here we are. Here is a nice sheath, and here is a pin. Now what I did with the pin was I turned it all up 7.9 to go, well, I checked it to go through this boss in the middle here. You can reuse. There's the size of the pin. So 35.5 long below the head. Head is 11.8 diameter, 2 millimeters thick, and the pin is 7.8 millimeters diameter. And it's made of 316 stainless or A4, whichever you choose to call it. So there we are, job done. If you don't have a lathe, it's possible to buy sheaves which are listed as 74 millimeters diameter by 20 millimeters thick, and I think they have say they have an 18 millimeter hole in the middle, which I assume will fit on the block, although I think it probably is a little bit bigger in diameter than that. You might have to find it out. Anyway, you can buy a block, and instead of remaking the pin, you can use an M8 cap screw, preferably a bit longer than this one, sort of a 50 mil or 60 mil one, because that'll give you a longer blank piece there for the bearing for the middle of the block, and you'll have to cut down the head with a hacksaw or an angle grinder and cut off the thread at the bottom end. You could either pin it over or araldite it all in, or cut off a slither of a nut and screw it onto the end, but you can find a way using an M8, which you can buy fairly cheaply. It will need to be ideally an A4 stainless steel. You could use an A2, which is easier to come by, but it will probably stain. It won't rust through, but it'll stain. So if you can get an A4, I think they come in pack. You can get them in packs of 4 at 40 mil long, which is a bit short. Probably you need a 50 or a 60. But anyway, that's how you can do it if you don't have a lathe to turn up a nice pin like that and a nice sheath like that. Okay, job done.